I think we're live right now on this Facebook Live. Let me just. Oops. We are live, I believe. Yes. Okay. Welcome to this Facebook Live. Let me just sort a few things out here. Good. So, let's just give an opportunity for people to catch up and to sort of catch on. I'm Dr. David Purvis. I'm talking about hyperstress and hidden stress. But we'll just give people a few moments to jump on. Hi, Dave. If you're jumping on, please say hi, say hello. Hi, Louise, because it's nice to know that there are people watching. Hi, Molly. Interestingly, I've been in private practice. Hi, Gillian. You made it the first time round. Well done, you. I've been in private practice. Well, I've been in psychological practice for a long time. 25, I don't know, some huge number anyway. And I virtually never see anyone for stress. So I never see anyone who has a problem with stress. Now, a bit weird, you think, given that I'm talking about hyperstress and hidden stress, two terms which I coined myself to describe things which I think you'll find interesting. Hi, Louise, Caroline. Hi, Louise, Caroline. Yeah, hi, Dave as well. Nobody ever comes to see me for stress. You know why? Because stress, it's pretty manageable. You can get by. Everybody knows what it's like to be stressed. And stress typically doesn't last forever. Hi, Kirsty. Stress is a bit more of a shorter thing. There's an interesting book which came out in the 80s, and it's called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And the answer is that zebras have a stressful situation, and then they shrug it off and they let it go. Human beings are not as gifted like that, so we tend to hang on to things a little bit more. So I never see anyone for stress. I see a lot of people for hyperstress, and I see a lot of people for hidden stress. And so I am going to kind of define what these are, because they're not just stress. Stress is, we know what stress is, right? But look, hyperstress is this. Hyperstress is like it's a chronic stress situation that taps into your pre-existing kind of brain programs. And it lasts for quite a long time, and it's really kind of intense, right? It's the sort of thing that leads to a breakdown. So if you were to say, hi, Jenny, hi, Deirdre, if you to say, for instance, yeah, I've been doing great in my job for 25 years, absolutely no problem at all, and then, I had this one colleague or manager or contractor or whatever, and, just like for months and months and months undermined me and everything, that would be a kind of a hyper stress situation. And I'll talk more about it in a little while. So hyperstress is pretty good functioning, but an intense, stressful situation that persists for a long time, but it pushes your buttons. Hi, Joyce. Hi, Alison. We've all got buttons. Hi, Jenny. And it pushes your buttons. Now, hidden stress is a bit different. Hidden stress is pretty much created when you're young, So it's like whereas hyperstress is created from the external environment probably as an adult, hidden stress is ongoing chronic arousal created in early life that's maintained by ongoing life. So it's created in early life, it's maintained by ongoing life. It's detrimental to your health. It costs you a lot in terms of well-being, and it's implicated, and it's likely to create lots of medically undiagnosed symptoms, as well as things like anxiety, depression, personality disorder, emotionally unstable personality, emotional dysregulation, kind of difficult to manage your emotions. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Joyce. Yeah. Hi, Alison. So we've got two kinds of stress, and both of them are difficult to manage. And I generally find that it's difficult for people to manage either one of these. So we all come into life into a sort of a family environment, and the circumstances that we come into life in kind of set up a pattern. They set up brain programs of how we expect the world to work. It's actually called an inner working model, right? So if you have a nice stable family, nothing much happens, really kind of boring, right? You expect the world to be stable, nothing much happening, really kind of boring, and you learn how to manage your emotions and how to get on with people. So that's good, right? But if you come into life and you have a more of an unstable family, a critical family, so it's the nurturing that you want isn't there, then you can set up a different kind of internal working model, which is, it can be all sorts of things. I'll come to it in a minute, but it basically can set you up to have an internal stress response where you're perhaps on guard, or you're expecting bad things to happen, or you're expecting criticism, and that sets up what I call hidden stress, because you're physically aroused in terms of being stressed, right? You're aroused. I mean, not chronically, I don't mean chronically, not massively necessarily, but you might be, but you're just always a bit more on edge. You're always a bit more watchful. You're always a bit more wary, and you're always like, it's hard to be comfortable. And that's what I'm calling hidden stress, because hidden stress is the kind of thing that I see, and you could also call it complex PTSD, to be honest, hidden stress. Although it's probably a bit different, because complex PTSD is one thing. This is a little bit different. Okay. So, now we've got hyperstress, which is probably triggered by the external world, and we've got hidden stress, which is probably triggered by the internal world. And how you respond to that, it either makes it better or makes it worse. And typically, the way that we respond to things often makes them worse, which is why people would end up coming to see me. So let's just talk about hidden stress, right? There are some characteristics. I've put a lot of research into this, actually. I've been thinking about it for quite a while. And I'm almost tempted to do a course on resolving hidden stress and the kind of medically undiagnosed problems that come from it. But difficult early life experiences can cause us to be sensitive to negative emotions, or sensitive to negativity. Okay, and we have typically what I'm going to call chronic, like long-standing autonomic nervous system, which is basically like long-standing arousal, and that leads to like an overstimulation of what's called the dorsal vagus nerve, which is the bit of your brain that takes you down all the way down to like exhaustion and catatonia and chronic fatigue. In a sense, it shuts you down and collapses you. It can make you sensitive to physical sensations, which of course brings us on to the idea of your body your body doing its own thing, right? Your body not obeying your instructions, your body being awkward and difficult and giving you symptoms that you don't want. And then of course your attention gets managed, gets altered in a way, because it feels as if there's something terrible happening to you. You develop negative beliefs about yourself, and hi Nasreen, and even body image problems. Now, you also, particularly of interest to a cognitive therapist like myself, you develop negative schemas. Now, I'm going to, there's a really good theorist called Jeffrey Young, who has developed the whole concept of schema. Now, a schema is like a deeper personality structure, okay? So if you think about how it works with CBT, if you're on my courses, you'll know this. At the very top, we have what's called automatic negative thoughts. These are kind of, oh, I'm stupid. The thing that just jumps into your consciousness, automatic negative thought. A bit lower down, we have core beliefs. Oh, I never get anything right. That's really weird. Why does never anything go right for me? Core belief, okay? And then right down the bottom, we have schemas. These are a little bit more personality based, a little bit more, more pervasive, but also a little bit harder to see. Now, I'm going to read out a list of common schemas. Now, if any of these resonate with you, like if you go, yeah, that's me, give me a thumbs up or a something or other. Hi Kenneth, hi Louise, yeah, good. Give me a thumbs up, just so that we can kind of like be on the same page with some stuff, because of course, whilst I've got things that I want to talk about, I'm open to suggestions as well. It's not just me preaching at you, I hope. Okay, so Hidden stress developed schemas. So these are the kinds of things that you might believe about yourself. Deep though, okay? Fear of abandonment. If any of this kind of like resonates with you, give me a thumbs up or a something, right? Fear of abandonment. Fear of rejection. Anyone? Shame or a belief that you're defective in some way. Dependence, feeling overly dependent on people and not feeling individual enough. Feeling overly vulnerable when really you're not particularly vulnerable, but feeling vulnerable. Any of this resonate with anyone? Feeling like you're a failure or believing like you're a failure. Okay, thank you, Gillian. Of course, given that I'm halfway down my list, I don't know which one. I don't know which one you're responding to. Loss of self-control or difficulty controlling yourself, and I call that affect, emotion, affect dysregulation, and it's like it's really hard to manage your emotions. Okay. Do you feel that you need to give everything to everyone, and you really don't matter, and as long as everyone else is covered, you're good, right? Self-sacrifice. Yeah, thank you. Keep it coming. What about approval seeking? Are you desperate for the approval of others? And would you rationally say, well, I don't really need that much approval, but I'm just desperate for approval. I can't bear the idea of rejection. Yeah. Okay. Emotional inhibition, right? So if in fact it's hard to feel stuff, it's hard to be connected with people, it's almost like you have to protect yourself. Just can't let people get too close. And finally, high standards. Do you have excessively high standards? So much so that you can go, well, actually, yeah, it does cause a problem, really, yeah. So those are kind of those are experiences that I would, some of those, not all, not everybody has all of those, by the way. That would be a thing. Encapsulated in hidden stress. Okay. Now, all stress problems have more or less three basic elements. And I'm going to introduce you in a little while to something called the stress nexus, which is my kind of resolution program, if you like, for this. But all problems have three main elements. The first one is this. Which reality are you focusing on, or which reality are you operating in? Now, if you think about hyperstress, you might be doing great for 20 odd years, right? And then you have a bad colleague or a bad contractor or something, and then you have a stressful situation. And now that's an external reality situation, right? So there you're likely to be focusing on the stress that's caused by that problem. But if you're kind of suffering from chronic hidden stress, your problem is likely to be internal, right? You feel defective, or you feel threatened, or you feel like a failure, when in fact you're not. And I asked earlier on for people to give me examples of stress and stuff, and I got some nice ones. Dave and Deb Home, okay. Are you on? I believe you are, yes. I always have tension in all of my muscles, shoulders scrunched up to my ears. I don't realize I'm doing that until I stand up. I also sleep curled in a tight ball like a fetus every night and wake up every morning all stiff and sore. Now, that is an internal reality problem, because if you're sleeping, yep, okay. So if you're sleeping, you don't really have an external reality problem, do you? It's an internal reality problem. And the kind of interesting question that we'll come to in a way is sleeping like a fetal ball, that's your solution to the problem. What's the problem you're trying to solve? If you're on, do you know what the problem is that you're trying to solve by sleeping in a fetal ball? Because if you do, that's a step forward. I don't know if Andrew's on, but almost always feeling anxious at work. Okay, well that's a fairly you'd kind of say hyperstress. It sounds like an external reality problem. Claire, who I don't think is on, said I also have body pain. I have body pain, which is unbearable depending on my anxiety levels. That sounds like an internal reality problem, right? And the pain is dependent upon the anxiety level, which tells you that she's sort of in control of it, but don't realize it. Okay, so there's a couple of examples of. Louise says he does body scans a lot, but wakes up with tension in his legs. I'll remind him about that in Anxiety Wizard. Right, okay. So, which reality are you focusing on? The second one is, which brain program are you running? Now, I said to I said to Dave, if sleeping in a fetal ball is what you do, that's your attempted solution to the problem. What's the problem? Are you on, Dave? Do you know what the problem is? Can you tell me what the problem is that you're trying to solve if you're sleeping in a fetal ball? I mean, I can have a guess at it, but I'd be interested to know what you think if you're on and it's the problem that you struggle with. Because you're in bed, so it's not an external reality problem. It's likely to be a pervasive program of threat. So you're trying to make yourself feel comforted and safe, right? So you're trying to feel safe. The chap Andrew who goes to work and feels anxious, well, he's fearing criticism, he's fearing rejection, he's fearing being found out, he's fearing being persecuted. I mean, so always with the work that we do here, the question is, what is the program you're running that creates this attempted but unhelpful solution? Hi, Christine. Okay, and the final one is, and I kind of just covered it in a sense, what's your response to the problem? So I guess you're all on here. We've got 15 watching right now, so it's not very many, but it's nice. You're all on here because you're interested in stress, right? What is your solution? What is the solution that you have tried for the problem that you have? Can anyone jump in and give me some notion of a solution that they use? And I'm going to gamble and say that no one is going to provide a solution that's useful. If anyone provides a solution that's useful, I would be interested and surprised. Because typically we don't. That's why we still have a problem. Now I'm going to introduce you to something that's called the stress nexus, and I've got a little experiment for you to do. So, can everyone do this for me? Okay? What we're going to do is we're going to rub our hands together. Now, when you rub your hands together, what's going to happen? Put some effort into it. Come on. You're not here just to observe. You're here to participate. Put some effort into it. If you rub your hands together, what's going to happen? Can anyone tell me what's going to happen? What's happening? What's happening now as you rub your hands together? Oh, well, step away from the situation, Sarah. That's a good one. Yeah. Breathing exercises. That is a good one. I eat my hat. You're doing some good things. Distraction. Yeah, not too bad, Jenny. What's happening? What was the upshot of that? Nice one. Thank you, Kirsty. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you. Heat from friction. Thank you, Louise. Now, good. Get hot. Good one, Julian. Now, this is you. This is the environment. You bring your characteristics, whether they're hidden stress characteristics or just your regular characteristics. You bring your characteristics to the environment, and you and the environment rub up against each other. Now, when you do this, you cause friction, and friction is interpreted by your hands as heat, but actually friction is energy, creates energy. And psychologically, when you rub up against a certain situation, that creates energy, and we perceive it as stress, arousal, tension, upset, emotional distress, right? It's energy. So we create, well, we don't create, but this interaction is called the stress nexus, because a nexus is a connection, right? You bring some stuff, the environment brings some stuff, Together, that creates stress. So what we have to do is we have to, in principle, do this. You bring your stuff, the work has its stuff, no stress. That's what we're after. When we work through the stress nexus, that's what we're after. Now, of course, I'm talking about two different things. I'm talking about hidden stress, which is basically going to be a lot of internally generated stresses. And that's hard to escape from. But we can think about that in a minute. Hyperstress, we're talking about you in a work, or you in a relationship, or you in some form of situation. So when I originally created the stress nexus, I did it for a talk I give at companies. And I basically said, what characteristics of the environment are likely to create or push your buttons or trigger the stress nexus, okay? Apparent lack of care about you. Unhelpful people. Unreasonable expectations. Uncertainty, right? Those are kind of pretty classic stressors. Now, you could say overwork. You could say lying and cheating and stealing and all sorts of other things. You could say that. Yeah, okay. Now, you bring some, inevitably, you bring your stuff. But I've got a little list of fairly classic stuff, right? You hold negative beliefs about yourself that get triggered in the stress nexus, right? I'm not good enough. I'll get found out. I'm not clever enough. Other people are clever than me. People are watching me. People will see that I don't know what I'm doing. All sorts of stuff, okay? So you bring these characteristics. You feel like a fraud or an imposter. You fear losing control. Fear failure, and you feel not good enough. So when you bring this stuff, okay, that's really difficult to manage, okay? So what do? Well, you've got to have a solution, haven't you? So you try your solution to manage the stress. You have high standards. You probably have high standards. You probably do perfectionism. You probably try to control all sorts of random things which are not at all related to the problem. You probably focus on overachievement and you worry a lot. Does that seem to ring a bell with anyone? Would those be classic and common reactions to a stressful situation? Anyone? Well, that's so far so good, but how is it that you remain trapped? How is it that these solutions don't work? Well, the reason they don't work is because they're solutions to they're attempted solutions to your internal kind of beliefs about yourself, etc., and they don't necessarily then work in the external world. So what we have to do is we have to find accurate and good solutions, okay? So what we do is, I've got a little list. You'll find many of these in Anxiety Wizard. We take 3 steps back to see the big picture. Now, that's a classic, and someone mentioned it earlier on, that's a classic sort of good tool to use at a stress response. Take 3 steps back to see the big picture. Because stress, because the stress is like an embodiment of threat, when you feel threatened, your attention narrows to focus on the threat. But of course, you don't really have a life-threatening threat, but your attention narrows. So when we take 3 steps back, the larger context of the problem that we're struggling with comes into play, and then we're able to sort of be a little bit more fruitful in finding solutions. We challenge the unhelpful beliefs that we have, these unhelpful schemas. Now, you might not be aware of what they are, but there's lots of tools that we use to uncover them. And again, in essence, they're programs that tell you how to feel, how to think, and what to do. And therefore, if they're wrong, they're very dangerous. We learn to retain power and control. And if, I know some of you have heard me talk about this and whatnot. We learn to keep power and control instead of giving it away to stuff. We recognize that in a stressful situation, particularly a hidden stress situation, but also in a hyper stress situation, you would think that you are the problem. But we recognize that you're not the problem, but you have a problem, and that's what we're working on, the problem that you have. You are not the problem. And certainly in hidden stress, if you've had a long-term chronic experience of stress, what happens is that your body finds it really hard to regulate your emotions. So your emotions become unstable, and in a way it it can be easy to overreact or underreact, and you're never quite sure what's what. Okay, so we can think of it like this. This is overreaction, but this is underreaction. So this is actually, and in the middle we have what we might call autonomic nervous system reaction, right? So we can have extreme overreaction, extreme underreaction. And what we want is it's hard to get parallel. What we want is to maintain that bit in the middle, which is more normal and more useful and fruitful, where you don't lose it and you can think coolly and you can remember to take 3 steps back. So we practice managing our stress level, and we'll call it arousal, so that it's optimal. And I remember I was working with someone a while back, and I think he said that he had, if you think of stress, 0, not at all, 10 is as bad as it could be. He said, yeah, mate, I've been at 8 for 30 years. Whoa, that's a lot. 8 for 30 years. Yep, 8 for 30 years. And we focused on bringing his stress level down as a main clinical intervention, right? And we got his stress level down over a period of about 6 to 8 weeks to 2. Now, 2 is nothing. 2's fine, right? So after 30 years, we still managed to bring his stress level down by paying attention, by managing it, and using tools, some of the active self-help tools. With hidden stress, I mean, we could spend a week talking about it, but there are some kind of really weird things that happen to your body, you know. You can start to imagine, or you can believe that you have physical problems, and the kinds of things that we talk about would be things like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, IBS, chronic pain, migraine. So these things are they're real problems, but they're developed often from an emotional background where we don't necessarily know how to express our emotions or our distress or our hurt or our need in a way other than through the body. And so it's really useful to get back in touch with the body, to think about dancing and music and singing and just being embodied in a sense. And we have to retrain our attention away from the physical symptoms we have. There's lots more we can talk about hidden stress. But one of the characteristics of hidden stress is that often we have distorted and unrealistic beliefs about health. One of them would be sometimes people with hidden stress believe that good health is having absolutely no sensations whatsoever. It's having nothing at all. And therefore anything that pops into consciousness is considered to be a disease or indicative of something serious. So those are the kinds of things that we need to think about. And also, as mentioned earlier on, better breathing and relaxation. So those of you who have said that you wake up with chronic tension, aching, etc., then really the solution to that, or a good solution, would be to start to work with relaxation and better breathing. Certainly, chest tension is commonly a consequence of poor breathing, a dysregulation between oxygen and carbon dioxide. So, we've talked about hyperstress, which is typically a bit more external reality focused, and we've talked about hidden stress, which is a bit more internal reality focused. Both of them are chronic, and both of them are, I'm going to say, really bad for you, right? I mean, there's no universe in which chronic stress is good for you. It creates all sorts of physical problems, and it is, significantly, how can I say this? Significantly detrimental to your well-being in a larger sense. And given that we're all on the journey to the terminus, you want to slow the journey down so you have a longer journey, right? Stress tends to speed it up a wee bit, if you get my drift, without being too blunt about it. So actually we want to see what we can do to reduce stress. Now, I would generally say as a general principle that it's possible for many, if not most, if not all, let's say many, if not most people, to live at a really relatively low stress level, let's say 2 or 3. I use a traffic light system, green, amber, red, and I say, okay, well, for you, what's green? What do you want? Where do you want to live? And they go, typically, let's say 0 to 3, right? It's possible to live in a 0 to 3. Now, of course, you're not in charge of the world. You're not in charge of everybody else. But you are in charge of yourself if you exercise that choice. And it is possible to learn to live in a 0 to 3 situation where basically you don't really have any substantial stress, and you're able to be and to do and to experience what you want without having this layer of difficult emotions and difficult sensations. So I think that's everything I want to talk about. If you want to get on the pathway to eliminate hyperstress and hidden stress, then my first recommendation is to join Anxiety Wizard if you're not already in Anxiety Wizard. And that will start you off on managing the sense of threat, managing the worry, and managing generally anxiety and depression. And it will really start to push you forward, and you'll start to realize that there are so many things that you can use and so many tools you can use to manage stress effectively, so that actually it just becomes a thing, right? Just becomes, yeah, well, I used to be stressed, but I'm fine now. Thank you for joining me for this hyper stress, hidden stress. Thank you for leaving comments, etc. And I will speak to you next week at the same time. And I don't know what the topic is yet, so if you have any suggestions, please let me know.